What's poppin', everybody? So this video is dedicated to one of my friends. I got 3 installments of 3 different videos I'm going to be making. I was helping him, talking to him, and he needed a little bit of guidance or maybe a little more extra information on these next 3 videos. So I'm going to jump right into it. So this one is going to be on boundaries and standards. Okay? Now these are extremely important, especially for ourselves, and something that we don't actually really think about. And the way I guess best I could describe it right off the bat is you can have a lot of victimization, and if you don't set that boundary, that victimization is just going to take over your life. All right, let's dive right into it. So, boundaries. Boundaries is the ability to say no to someone. Boundaries is the ability to understand and have awareness that what you believe is right, you can withhold within yourself. Now, what I mean by withholding within yourself is that if someone else pushes your boundary, you can stop it and not feel bad and not worry that that other person is going to be mad at you, and be okay with the fact that you have these specific boundaries that you have set for yourself, and this is what you're going to keep trying to set. All right, so I'm going to actually get a little bit more into standards as well. I've already dived into boundaries, but this is kind of something that would pull on to boundaries, okay? So, and this would be really, really big for my friend here, is when you are trying to set up your boundaries, you need to first kind of do what that video that I'm going to have before this, which is on your needs. Once you've figured out your needs, then you can move on to boundaries. Because once you've set up your needs and you're starting to do the activities that you need to make you feel whole, now you'll start to find that you're going to have boundaries that you don't want people to cross. You don't want all these negative people in your life. You don't want this certain person yelling at you or taking advantage of you, yet you still in the repetitive cycle of letting it happen, letting it happen, letting it happen, and it makes you upset. So this would be where you got to stop, set that boundary, and set that standard. Now, both of these are intangible and really close together. And the reason why I'm bringing them together is because if I set a certain standard to make a certain amount of videos every day, and I hold myself accountable to that standard, then what that would allow me to do is it allow me to give myself confidence and self-worth, because I know that I've set this certain tradition or standard for myself, which has allowed me to continue what I love to do, because it is a standard at which I need to make sure I regulate myself with. Because if you don't have any standards, you're just a deadbeat dude or girl doing nothing, thinking about nothing, and you're a little zombie petrified, just going through the motions. And this is hard because when you go into the standards, a lot of other people that you meet don't really have that good of standards, nor do they have really good boundaries to set those standards up for. And so everyone's getting really sensitive, everything needs to be politically correct. Really, it's more of a distraction. But I'm using that as the example that all of these kind of social conditions that we have that make go, oh, I don't want to hurt that person's feelings, or, oh, I can't say that's like it's not politically correct. Now, the general reality, yeah, that kind of sucks. You know, you have to do there's certain roles that you might have to play depending on where you're working or what you're doing. But for the most part, when you're yourself, and as you're moving forward trying to figure out your life, standards and boundaries are the only 2 things that are going to keep you almost sane while you're moving through this. And here's the thing, is that when you put up your standards and your boundaries, it's not something that you're just going to immediately say, I'm going to have this standard and you're going to be going great, right? This is something that's going to be working on. It's something that you're going to have to continuously push and push and push. It's just something that's going to evolve. Your standards and your boundaries are going to evolve constantly. But notice how they're not changing now. Notice that probably they're going in the opposite direction. You're getting less and less boundaries. You carry less and less. Your standards are being lower and lower and lower because everyone around you standards are lower. And so this is hard if you're trying to build an infrastructure, if you're trying to build a friends group, if you're trying to build your life. And you have all these people who have really bad standards around you, then you think socially that those standards are okay. And so then you embody those standards. And then you live out thinking that those are the best standards you could possibly have. I'm here to tell you that's complete bullshit. You need to get the standards at which you believe you deserve. Now, let's say right now you're in an extremely negative state. You don't think you deserve anything. In fact, you think that you have to give in order to get anything in return. Now, this is something that you would need to work on, obviously. But let's say you're average, you're just starting to get through that, you've kind of started to get off of the negative, recognizing the awarenesses of all the negative thoughts you're having, of the patterns and the, again, boundaries and standards at which you are not keeping for yourself. And that discipline muscle keeps getting smaller and smaller and weaker and weaker and weaker because you're not holding yourself accountable to those. Now, the reason why this makes you healthy is because standards and boundaries is what gives you self-worth. It's what gives you that confidence to go out there and be like, and nobody cares. And the reason why nobody cares is because you don't care. Because you've set your boundaries and your standards that say that I can make little noises. It doesn't affect my image. I don't care. It's whatever. But if you didn't set those boundaries or didn't set those standards, if you go and then someone looks at you different or looks at you weird, and you haven't had that self-esteem and self-worth set up by keeping these boundaries and standards consistent, then you'll fall back. And this is actually another one of the videos that I'm going to get into in the next one, which is how to not care what other people think. And this is actually going to be special because I have a couple tips that I have not seen other people use in order to try to alleviate that. Now, spinning right back around to boundaries and standards, I'm going to give you an overview. So let's get into the nitty-gritty. Let's go to the very root cause. Boundaries. Why are your boundaries so bad? Well, it could be past experiences, past relationships. If you're a man and you are very socially conformed, when you go into a relationship with someone, you're needing so many things from her. And so then you keep pulling and pulling and pulling instead of coming from abundance from yourself. And what that does is now you're looking for the woman to satisfy all those needs. But on top of that, subconsciously, you're also reacting to how she views the world and her boundaries. And what the negative effect of that is that what it does is you have now set your standards to what she believes is right. And the problem with that is it's not coming from you. It's not coming from your own personal experience. It doesn't give you self-worth. It doesn't give you confidence. In fact, it makes you second-guess yourself because you're feeding off of her and not yourself. Does that make sense? So, let's say she goes out, parties, has a really good time, and she doesn't go to bed until 3 in the morning. Let's say you do the same because you're a little pussy and you just let her set the standards and boundaries because you haven't set them for yourself. Now, you're staying up till 3 in the morning partying with her because you think it's okay, even though you have work at 6 in the morning tomorrow. Knowing that when you get up, you're going to feel like shit. 2, you're going to be like, well, man, yesterday was awesome, but shit, now I got to go to work. You're probably going to arrive to work late. Your mental state is going to be all kinds of fucked up because you're going to be rushing because now you've only got like 2.5 hours of sleep depending on how long your commute is, right? Kind of crazy. Yet it's something that I notice a lot of people do, and I was guilty of this. And it's draining, and it's not good. So, with this in mind, how do we start to set up those boundaries? How do we start to set up what we need in our own lives to give us that self-worth, to give us that confidence, something that we can fall back on and understand that, you know what, this is my belief and this is my reality, and I'm going to stick with it. So, like I said before, once you found your needs, realize up until the point of insecurity or uncomfortability where you would go in certain scenarios. Okay? So the way to set that up would be to actually go out. Take some freaking action. Find when you feel uncomfortable. Find when a man or a woman does a certain something, it makes you feel uncomfortable. Find your boundary at which you don't feel comfortable. Because what this does, and what a lot of people don't do, is they just go along life going, whee! Again, in that zombie state. Not being able to continuously move forward because they haven't kept their boundaries and standards in set. And what I mean in set, in stone. And what I meant when you evolve these standards is when you start to feel the uncomfortability, when you start to feel all of these weird emotions, when you've actually stopped and went, whoa, instead of trying to run away from it, actually stopped and said, that doesn't really make me feel good. Now you've set your boundary. You figured it out. You found the awareness. Now set the boundary. I will not want to be treated this way. Therefore, I'm going to do blank. What is the blank? I would recommend that you try to come from love. Especially what if it's like, oh, someone cheated on me and my girlfriend cheated me with this dude. I'm about to be like, there's my boundary. I'm not feeling good. I'm just going to set it up. I'm going to fucking burn their house down. That's my standard. No, try to come from love. Understand that, you know what? You weren't probably on the level to keep her, nor were you maybe even mentally prepared for that. So it ended. You have a bunch of negative emotions with it. Yet, at the same time, it's almost like a gift. Just like the sun. Because it allows you to learn, allows you to move forward. Because if you take it as a learning experience, then you can just move forward with it. Once you move forward, now you can realize that that boundary wasn't okay for you. And you know what? When a girl does that again, you can have the empowerment of saying, I'm not okay with this. This makes me feel uncomfortable. And you can you can exit. It's done. It's over with. Same thing with a guy. See, this is one of the hardest things for us to do, especially when we have low self-esteem and low confidence, is to step up and say, I don't like that. I have boundaries, and I'm not going to deal with that. But I am going to deal with what I believe is right. Now, this is where a little bit of a weird paradigm happens, because, and this is actually something that I've been really, really thinking about, all right? So, who's right and who's wrong on whose reality should be proper? Meaning we are taught that there's a list of guidelines and rules that we're supposed to have and we're supposed to use, but at the same time, how do you know if they're right or not? They're socially acceptable, but does it really aid you? Does it really fulfill you and make you happy? No, it doesn't. It just keeps you in a certain little level. Now, I'm not saying go to the extreme of jump off a cliff because you don't know and you haven't set that boundary to understand that it's socially acceptable to be running off a cliff and just going, wee, it's okay, I'm going to figure it out later, and then you're dead. Okay, that's why we have social conditioning. That's why we have social norms. It's so that it speeds up and expedites that stupid learning curve we have. But the problem is we get too complacent. We get too safe on those certain boundaries and standards, and we never evolve from them. And so then we're always in this pain body, continuously moving around the boundary. Once we can set that boundary, now, once we have confidence that that boundary is set, we can start to move forward with that boundary. Start to think to myself, okay, I set that boundary, that person did that thing, it's not going to affect me anymore because I've set my boundary, and I accept that I'm not going to deal with that, or I'm not going to, and I don't mean like put it away from your brain and smoke some weed and try to like fly off into fucking Neverland and try to forget about it and run away. No, what I mean is to have the awareness to be able to manage the fact that this person, entity, or event is making you uncomfortable or feel as though your boundaries are being pushed, and that's when you can draw the line. And that's where you have that self-confidence. Because when people ask you for money, when people try to take stuff from you, what this does is it allows you to say no. And it doesn't make you be a people pleaser and feel bad every single time you say no. Because the reality is you don't owe anybody shit. And nobody owes you shit. And so based off of this, you can recognize that nobody's right and nobody's wrong. Everybody's in the same boat. Nobody has any idea what is actually right and what is actually wrong. Now, I'm not saying go out and kill someone and be like, I think it was okay. No, there's obviously morals and normal standards to things. But challenge the ideas of how you are acting, behaving, and thinking within the boundaries that you have already set. Because here's the thing is you have set boundaries already. But the problem is you're not sticking to them. You're letting them slide. Or you're setting the boundary of, I guess I'm just going to get abused, or I'm just going to get pushed over with, or they'll just take my money anyway, right? You just put your hands up. There's a little bit of victimization there. Once we've firmly placed those boundaries, now what we can do is start to set our standards and start to raise our standards. See, once you have the boundaries to say no, that'll give you the self-confidence, self-worth to go, you know what? My standard is to work every day. I'm going to do that regardless of if my girlfriend's partying till 3 a.m. or not. Do you really want that girlfriend still? Does she have the same boundaries you do now? Something to think on. And the same goes vice versa. I'm not just trying to get on men here, but it does seem to be more of something that we struggle with. So, you set the boundaries. Now you got to start the standards. Now the standards are a little more egotistical. Now I'd hope that you don't go too far deep with the mind and the ego and trying to use that as a power move to be like, I have these standards, look at me. No. They're for your own personal gain and happiness. See, that's what I'm trying to get you guys to understand, all right? Is this happiness doesn't come from outside sources. It doesn't come from your girlfriend that's partying until 3 a.m. It doesn't come from your bus driver that laughs at your jokes and gives you a piece of candy every once in a while. No, no, it does not come from that. It comes from within. It comes from how you view yourself and how you treat yourself. Notice I said treat yourself, because treating yourself would be setting those boundaries and standards. Treating yourself would understand that you need to set them to what you believe is right. And when a boundary or standard gets demolished by another one from someone else that's better, let's say you have a friend come in who's got a crazy work ethic way better than yours, and you aren't jealous of that, but instead you go, damn, dude, that's a really nice freaking job. I admire the fact that you did that. That is dope. And then decide to yourself, you know what? Maybe my standards are just a little too low. Maybe I can push a little more. And so that's where you can elevate that standard and then move it up to a new paradigm, which is I can work more. And the more and more you do this, the more your friends group, I guarantee, will change. Because the quality in people in your life will begin to improve once you set your standards to that. But when you start to set your standards downward, that's when you start meeting and being able to get that poison drip, that vampirism from everyone else because you haven't set your standards. Now keep in mind, once you've got the boundaries, that's what makes it better, because now you can start to let the negative old people gravitate away from you and let the new ones come in. And that's going to be one of the hardest parts, because we get so stuck on being safe, so stuck on routine, conformity, feeling that this is okay and not trying to push past the unknown into the known. So this would be the exact same thing with your boundaries and standards. You are unknown to what you could be setting your boundaries and standards to. And because you're not trying to push forward, or you're not aware of that, the same people will always continuously reoccur in your life, because what you believe you deserve. So let me ask you this. What do you deserve? Do you deserve the best? Do you deserve the best team, the best friends, the best communication skills, the best girls? Or is it less than that? Do you think because of the way you were treated or your past experiences or events that have happened in your life that you believe that you don't need anything? That this person's doing everything and then it's whatever. I don't have control over it. My boundaries and standards, again, are down here. But once you recognize that, once you can see it, you can slowly start to move it up. Now, what are some good standards? Good standards are something that puts you, like I said in the other video, presence into presence. Because these standards and boundaries set you up so that it's not impossibly hard where you're like, holy shit, I can't do this. But at the same time, you're not in that safe little box that you keep revolving around in because it's what you're used to. Instead, you break it open. And when you do that, that's when it starts to happen. That's when you start to make the changes. That's when your standards start to pull you into presence, because it's not too easy, but not impossible. Like, I'm not trying to be the president, but I'm also not trying to do nothing and make billions of dollars every day, right? There's a nice medium. I know I'm going to extremes here, but the nice medium of you needing to learn, you needing to take the risk, going into the unknown, trying different boundaries and standards, because the only way that you will know if it's right or wrong is if you try it off continuous tries. See, it's a numbers game. Everything is a numbers game. And what I mean by that is you have to teach yourself something. It's a numbers game. Yes, it comes easier to others than some, but again, it's still a numbers game. What makes Roger Federer or Tiger Woods the pros that they are? They hold themselves to a ridiculous standard, and they have extreme boundaries. And because of that, every day, Tiger Woods or Roger Federer has that certain standard and boundary to say, I only will let this quality of people into my life. Nothing less. Or else I know my life is going to start to go down. My quality of life will start to go down. Because I don't have those joyous people. I don't have the people that aren't trying to need from me. Right? They're trying to help. Because they aren't trying to get anything from me. Because they don't need to. Because their needs are already met. See? Notice the boundary change. Notice the need change. Alright, I hope that helped. See you guys in the next one.